Hey everybody, this is Dominic D'Angelo on behalf of WrestleZone.com, and it is an impromptu two. What am I saying? Two Dynamite Dudes on a ramp. Oh, just no, it's two Dynamite Dudes now. We changed the name, and I am here by myself today. We're gonna have a special guest coming in here. Someone you are very familiar with at WrestleZone. He's a mercenary. He is in it for the money. It's Robert DeFelice will be here momentarily. But I'm here by myself at this moment in time and here to talk some wild news and ongoings that's happening in AEW. This is we're looking at this camera instead of the camera down here. I'm going probably when Robert gets on, I'm probably going to look at this camera. But right now, I'm trying to look at you guys right here, right now. We're live. We're going on. I don't know if we have one comment in here, and it's Dan Goose. What's up, brother? How you doing? Usually we have a several amount of people in here, but he's the only one here right now. Yes, you are. It's me and you, buddy. We're rocking and rolling. But yes, let's get some feedback. If you happen to join in live, give me your comments, anything like that. You can follow me on Twitter at Dominic D'Angelo. You can follow WrestleZone on Twitter, WrestleZone.com. You can follow Robert DeFelice once he gets here at Dude Felice on Twitter. Some cool stuff happening over there at WrestleZone. They have an interview with the Mixers ahead of NWA coming up, NWA 74. Jay Bradley, and I can't remember the other individual's name, but they're there. Colin Tessier does a wonderful job there. I have a new interview up actually with Brian Gerwertz talking his new book and stuff like that. So tune into that. Hey, Ryan James, what's happening, brother? But yes, so go to WrestleZone.com, check some things out. But right now we're here to talk some AEW Dynamite and what happened and what could happen and all the reports going down. It's a lot. It's some wild stuff happening. And, it's been a long time overdue. Marcus and I have been a little fast and loose with showing up here and doing the show. So I wanted to get something going here ahead of Rampage and just in light of everything that's been going on. It's been nuts. So Ryan Dice, you're a pro wrestling referee in Indiana, man. You got to make some 3 counts there for Bobby the Brain Heenan back in the day. That's the only big. What's some other wrestlers out in Indiana that were born in Indiana? I know what's his name. David Letterman was a big fan of Bobby the Brain Heenan, and they were both from the state of Indiana. Anywho, well, where am I going with this? Let's start, with that opening promo on AEW Dynamite. Holy smokes. Either way, what Punk said and his exchange with Moxley was great. Great wrestling television that you don't get to see that often. It's very refreshing and there's the shift of what's going on, obviously, with Triple H taking over WWE, and then, just how AEW's kind of been now with the likes of CM Punk, the likes of Jon Moxley, the likes of Eddie Kingston, all in the mix there. You have just these guys that are really good on the mic and that don't need scripts and that kind of rely on themselves and have this authenticity to them. And, all those guys present that. So seeing all that come into play and having all that happen really converged in that opening promo with Mox and CM Punk. And, there was a lot of reality to some of that too, where it's what the heck's going to happen and what the blurring of the lines. That whole particular instance where CM Punk calls out Hangman Page. It's it's crazy. It's really crazy. And, it seemed out of left field when it happened during the show. And then here you hear reports from Dave Meltzer and then eventually others, I think Fightful and then PW Insider all had that same information that Punk went off the script with that. And he ended up doing more, doing that, calling Hangman out for reportedly some differences they had building up their feud to Double or Nothing, where Page alluded that he was kind of Punk was kind of an outsider looking to ruffle up some feathers, and sort of indirectly referenced the relationship with Punk and Colt Cabana, who had dicey past before, obviously following the podcast and lawsuit and all that stuff. Oh, Steven Chambers is here. We got DJ here. What's happening, brothers? How you guys doing? Thanks for hopping in. I messaged Nesha, by the way, Steven. Have not heard from her. This was all impromptu pretty much. I came up doing this today, as an impromptu thing. So that's why Marcus is in here. We're going to get Robert DeFelice on here soon enough. But anywho, I want to get your guys' thoughts about what's been going on this whole week. With all these reports coming out, there's still a lot of speculation and thought that this could all still be planned. Maybe they're leading towards a CM Punk heel turn after all this. He did have some heelish moments during that pro opening exchange with John Moxley. He, said think what you want and basically all that stuff, and drug down Moxley, drug down Eddie Kingston, and Hangman Page, all baby faces. So there's that going on. But it's fun. It's fun to kind of speculate. We have a run-in by my cat Razor here. It's very fun to speculate and try to figure out what exactly is real, what isn't. And that's what kind of makes it fun. I covered Eric Bischoff's after 83 weeks, addendum show almost, I guess it is, on adfreeshows.com today. And he was fascinated by it. And the fact that they kind of hot-shotted this upcoming match here on Dynamite between Mox and Punk really showed some chaotic elements of, hey, we don't know what to expect here. And, another report here from the Wrestling Observer today, Dave Meltzer said that that's the plan, is to have CM Punk versus Moxley at All Out. And although that's not 100% confirmed and it hasn't been announced, that's the plan. And they don't really have a backup plan, according to Meltzer's reports. So it's been a wild time here in pro wrestling. What I said on an episode of Business of the Business with Lavi Margolin and John Paz, that I'm intrigued to see how Tony Khan and AEW kind of, I didn't want to say kind of come back with it all, but react to how Triple H taking over. Triple H is a smart guy. Triple H is more in touch with the modern times, and he knows what fans are looking for, and way more than a 76-year-old Vince McMahon would. So we got to kind of look out for that in regards. But hey, we have the run-in right here. Let me get this all set up. I got to get all adjusted here. We got it. Oh my God! Look at your setup. I like it.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I like your setup. I like the doors. I like the action figures.
Thanks. I wanted to show a little bit more of this, my whole environment here. And look, I even got your fucking name on there. So,
how
about that?
I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes,
I am in it for the money. Thank you.
You're welcome. I thought I covered a lot of bases in that little thing. So, what are you going to do,
What are you going to do? I am very excited to be here. This is a banger edition of Dynamite. Lots of stuff happening afterwards covering Dynamite, which,
You know all about that. Now, you were just on a show a little bit ago. What was it?
I was just doing my regular Smark Out Moment hot tags with Callum Wiggins. As we've said, I am a mercenary, so I'm all over the place. You can catch me on Fightful later, but let's get into Dominic.
Yes. Well, I was just opening this whole thing up about what's the big news has been, and so let's get your vibe on it. You work for Fightful. Sean Ross Sapp has reported several things going of this ongoing storyline or story. But what's your whole perspective on this all? And initially starting off, how about what did you think of the promo between Mox and Punk? So, and then moving on from that.
The show itself, I thought the opening was as hot as possibly can be. I thought that Punk calling out Hangman was random, but I thought it was fun. I thought, hell yeah, okay, cool. He's still got some shit to do with Hangman. And then he gets into it with Mox. He's calling Mox the third best guy in his group. He's calling him the third best guy in the Shield. Mox gets in his face, says, you're only here because you've run out of money. They're fighting. This is everything I want in a wrestling segment. This was probably as good as it gets. And then the report comes out from Sean that, well, first, to be fair, it was Dave first that said, hey, that wasn't planned. And then Sean comes out with the report that says, yeah, things are tense, and that wasn't planned, and that could have been seen as a receipt for some of the promo work that Hanger was doing in May.
Yep.
And then you go back and you watch that, and that does seem a little tense. According to multiple reports, this all stems back seemingly to something with Colt Cabana.
Yeah.
It all got way too intense, way too quickly. But I think, good personal issues make for great television.
They
That's where
do.
I'm sitting here with it.
They very much do. You can hear me now, Robert, because I can't
Yeah.
see you right now. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you well. I hope you can still hear me and see me.
I can hear you okay. I just lost my screen. I don't know what happened. Like my whole freaking screen. So 1 second. But yeah, no, I'm with you on that. As long as you can hear me, I think, and that's what I said to open the show too. Was this? It's just been, it's been fun as just a observer, and even if you're a fan or even if we're covering it, holy crap, it's been fun to do too. Like it's just this blurring of the lines and what's real, what isn't. We had this with MJF. Now we have this with Punk and supposedly Hangman, and other elements of Punk being unhappy and all this stuff going on. It's very, very strange. Yeah, what did you think? Now you hear a lot too. A lot of the speculation is like, what if this is all just an elaborate plan, laid out and everything like that? Where do you kind of fall on that right now?
I think that there are people that still believe Montreal was an elaborate plan. Doesn't matter who comes out and says that it wasn't. Doesn't matter who comes out and takes credit for it. 25 years later, there's still people who think it's a massive work. If this is a work, bravo, you did your job. People are talking, they're believing what you're saying. But I don't think that it is, just because look, I don't think they would go through the trouble of manufacturing real life heat for the sake of working people.
Yeah, it seems like it's overdone a little bit. Like you can't have.
We have lost Dominic. I am still here, and I will talk about the way I looked at this promo. Listen, I think CM Punk is a masterful worker. I think CM Punk is one of the best things in the wrestling world. I think that you don't have to love everyone. This is what I'll get at with this. I think that you don't have to love everyone that you work with, even in an era where it seems like that's part of what we're all expecting, especially from AEW, where it's like, oh, but the culture's changing and we're changing the world and changing the universe. I don't think you need to have a shiny, happy people holding hands relationship with everyone you work with. That's just me. I think that in the long run, CM Punk is good for AEW. I think that in the long run, anything he does is good for this company. I certainly hope he's not looking forward to trying to split the place, because, listen, if he's dropping the title next week, it's very possible that he is. And hopefully that's not the case, because I like CM Punk and I'm glad he's back and I want him to stay there.
Yeah, that seems. See, I don't know what's going on here, Robert. I'm like having two me's on here. It's so weird. Hold on a second. Let's see what I can do here. I want to try to. I'm on here twice, so I'm hearing an echo. Can you hear an echo on me?
Yeah, I am hearing a bit of an echo on you. I think you probably got to close out one of your windows. There must be another window open
That's
somewhere.
what I'm looking for. I can't find another window. What is going on? Okay, Robert, man the ship right now. I'm going to close all windows.
I'm going to man the ship.
Okay.
We're going to talk about more CM Punk stuff. I'm going to talk about what I liked about this promo, what I didn't. Listen, CM Punk shooting straight with Moxley going, you're the third best guy in your group, and that's a theme in your career. I like that. I think that, saying, hey, John Moxley is great, but he's not the best. I appreciate that. I appreciate the random jab at him for not defending the title against Eddie Kingston. I appreciate the jab at Kingston, saying you're the second best Kingston I've shared a locker room with. I liked all of this. I liked the fact that it felt real, regardless of whatever's happening behind the scenes. We'll worry about that later. It's good TV. Oh, you're muted now. Yes, you're muted.
Now I'm not. Jeez, what a boomer I am. Holy smokes. It's a humbling experience. I try to man the ship here, and I jump off.
This is why I'm here. I got to pull you back in. You can't be jumping off here when I'm here to save you.
Right. But I'm with you on a lot of this. Like, I loved it, and I love the fact, that the Punk took digs at those people, even though they're baby faces and stuff like that. Now, do you think this is leading into like a CM Punk heel turn ultimately?
Yeah, but it's not the right time for it. Like, people love Punk. They're glad he's back. He's finally going to defend the title. You can't just go, all right, let's rush it and turn him heel. Because, I mean, they're doing the title match next week. And there's so many different ways that this can go. Does it end in a schmaz where, okay, now you got to put him in a cage in Chicago? I don't know if they'd put him in a cage, but they could, Does it end in, oh crap, here comes MJF? Does it end in Punk just beating Moxley and the plan is actually, well, we wanted to get to Kingston or Brian or Claudio in Chicago to begin with? There's so many different ways you can look at this. Right now, I'm just excited for what happens next. I certainly hope it's not Moxley beats Punk and Punk's out of there, because that's not what I want.
Yeah, that would not. You mean like out of there, legit out of there? Like,
yeah,
he's like dissatisfied and he's gone.
Yeah, for whatever reason. I know that Sean's report doesn't necessarily say that that's where things are going, but because there was some talk of that going around the internet, I just want to say that I would hope that that's never the case.
Yeah, I feel like Punk, that would be the worst case scenario, I would think. Now, I'm not into the idea of like it just hot shotting, because like there was the report today from Meltzer too that this match is all supposed to happen at All Out. And I don't know if you've heard anything different, but like if that's the case, it's just a head scratcher to why you're putting it out there already. Like, I just like to put it there on next week and advertise it for next week. It was already a pay-per-view match. There was, aside from popping a rating potentially, like there's no reason to do it. Now, the only thing I can think is last year, if you look at last year's ratings, it was before Punk, it was before the first dance. And so this Dynamite coming up would be the one after the first dance. And they had big ratings for that, like over 1 million viewers. Now they're like at 975, I think it was 957. I can't remember.
It was 957 this week.
957. Okay. So yeah, it was at 957 this week. Like, it's plateaued and it's kind of leveled out. So maybe they want to kind of reflect it from the year. Okay, we got to get this thing back up, especially with this, merger going on and all that stuff. We got to put our best foot forward. But it seems like it's muddying the waters of like, okay, what if this doesn't work? What if Punk and Mox draw a decent rating, but not to the level of like what they're expecting or hoping for? And, it does create some intrigue of like, why is this happening? But it's also like, you already had a good match going with Mox and Punk. You already showed, like, just that opening promo is proof of it. And that these guys are like heated and they're ready to go. So I don't know. It's just, you hope everything levels out and there's Tony Khan and everybody that make the stars align and know what they're doing with it, because it could kind of blow up in their face in certain ways, like especially if there is those reports happen to have that, like, things are rocky backstage.
I mean, there's a comment here from DJ Cassier saying Punk did bring up that he beat another John in Chicago. Do you think Punk wins and walks out on the company? Look, I see no reason to hot shot the Summer of Punk 2011. You could. I just think that it's an unnecessary it's an unnecessary trope to fall back on right now. I think at most, maybe they just can't get the match in the ring. And
But
they just
Robert, what you're even saying is like you're hoping that like Punk doesn't just straight up and leave. Like if you were to win the title and then convert like further the reports that oh he is unhappy or he did leave, like maybe they'll play into that more and fan that flame, or just like oh did he leave? Are we sure about that? But
the weird thing is like he's not playing that up on television. Same thing with the
yes,
Hangman
that's a good
rivalry.
point.
He wasn't playing it up in May that there was any issue, and Hangman came at him with all this vitriol. And here it's like, well, Punk didn't. He's not saying he's unhappy. In fact, he said on Wednesday, "God, I missed you guys. I'm so happy to be here." Like there is no connection there outside of reports on the internet say Punk's unhappy, and I honestly don't think that he really is. As I was saying when you were gone, I think there's this weird expectation that because it's AEW, you have to love everyone and everything you're doing and everyone you're working with. And sometimes in life, like that's just abjectly not true. You don't have to, and I think we're in this weird time where it's almost like a boys club where you've got these people who are just like, yay, AEW. And look, AEW is great, but I also think AEW is growing. They're expanding beyond the boys club. It's not the elite Jericho and some other guys anymore. It's an entire promotion, which is taking on the weight of another promotion in Ring of Honor. There's so much happening. It can't be the vision of 2019 AEW anymore.
No, and I think I've been hearing a lot of this too online, and in interviews and stuff like that. That the honeymoon phase is kind of feeling over, and I think it is. Like basically, it's like stuff is up for criticism, and the leeway that's been given to AEW, by some fans, like is gone. Like it's like okay, well you're 2.5 years established here. You've had Punk for over a year now. Sure, you've dealt with injuries and things like that, but still, you're a wrestling company and you have a lot of stars on your roster. Too many, like some might say. I say that I think they got too many people, but it's just a matter of what are you doing? Like, and where's it gonna go? And with All Out coming up, it's just like that's your marquee show. Between that or Double or Nothing, and you want to make sure you're presenting your best thing forward. But I mean, at its core, AEW is a television product. Like the pay-per-view is almost secondary at this point. So, like next week, you go into it, sure. Now, hopefully, gonna get a good rating that you want out of all of this. But I mean, if you were to do that, I can't remember, Robert. I grew up at that time, but like when Goldberg and Hogan were put on Nitro, I can't remember how much before they hyped it exactly.
That's about a week.
Was it about a week? Okay.
Okay, like it wasn't even really a week. They did Thunder, and JJ Dillon goes, he's gonna fight Goldberg, and then they packed the Georgia Dome because they were gonna pack the Georgia Dome anyway.
Yeah.
And they just gave him a bonus of, hey, Goldberg's gonna run through Hulk Hogan. Granted, I think that TV ratings mattered so much more in 1998. They still matter today, but they're not the end all be all. But I can't say that they're any less important than pay-per-view subscriptions. So we'll just have to see where this goes. I have enough faith in the product that I think they do have a plan. But we're going to have to see where it goes. At the very least, Wednesday became must-see TV almost instantly following yesterday's report.
Now, how much do you think this is a reactionary move from what Triple H is doing on the other side of things? Do you think that's like, or do you think this is just a matter of circumstance where, okay, there is some tension and issues going on backstage, and Tony's trying to weather the storm as much as he can with certain things of this, and try and do, make things balance out? Or do you think there's a little bit to do with like, hey, Triple H is, people are seeing changes, people are talking about these changes, and now, we're seeing some stuff come to fruition with WWE and what Triple H's mindset's going to be moving forward. Do you think a lot of that has anything to do with what we saw on Monday night or Wednesday night, and then potentially next week here.
I don't think it's reactionary to WWE because they exist in their own universe. They're not going head to head. You know, look, if Triple H is making great TV, I think that's better for AEW because no matter what, WWE is the forefront of the wrestling business. And if they're doing well, then everybody else is going to do even better. You know?
Yeah, the sea level rises when everybody's up there, and it just makes each product better. And everybody said that too. Like Tony Khan said that, Matt Hardy said that on his podcast. Like it just makes the wrestling product better when there's more people, when there's intrigue to go to the other promotion, or there's the unexpected of like free agency happening and all that stuff. It's definitely good for the product overall. We haven't talked in a while, but what has been your kind of perspective on AEW's presentation as a whole? Like, what do you like about it, and what do you think they kind of need to work on?
I think this show gave us the best and worst of AEW in the sense that I think this first hour was great. The Punk Moxley stuff was great. The Daniel Garcia Bryan Danielson match was fantastic. And then the show just spun out of control and started just cramming things into that final hour. And I think that one thing I would definitely change, it's not because I love Jim Ross. I have nothing but love and respect for Jim Ross. Jim Ross was so cranky on Wednesday night that it actively took away from the product because he's just like for example, when Jungle Boy is cutting his promo and Christian comes out to basically decline the challenge, Jim Ross is going there going, how's he going to say no? He can't say no. And then he says no. And then immediately JR is like, oh my God, he said no. Oh, there it is. There. It's like, okay, it's too much. It's almost like they're trying to have him in a old head detractor role that, I think a lot of people might associate with a cornet or something. But I don't want to see that from Jim Ross. I just want Jim Ross to be the voice of wrestling and be the strong voice that he can be. And maybe, unfortunately, maybe that's not in the cards. I don't know. I don't want to put that on JR. I just think that this week was one of those weeks where it detracted from the show to have him in such a surly mood.
I think something now maybe. So I'm kind of like multitasking as the show's going on when I'm watching it. But when they make the announcer change, like whether it's like Shivani at the booth or Taz at the booth or JR at the booth, do they show that change? Because I remember that's something I kind of liked about Nitro back in the day, is like the first hour and a half or whatever it was Larry Zbyszko, and then the second half was like Bobby Heenan or Mike Tenay or something like that. Have they kind of indicated when those changes happened?
So for a couple of weeks this month and at the end of last month, they were doing a thing where JR would do the second hour of Dynamite, and they would come out, they would do the whole, hey, it's the voice of wrestling, it's Jim Ross. And that I think works better.
Yeah.
Because I think less fatigue. He's an older gentleman. He just kicked cancer's ass, which shout out to him for that. But I think less fatigue is better for Jim Ross because it's not fair to him. It's not fair to his legacy. It's not fair to the audience. At the same time, maybe people were red-assed backstage and maybe that rubbed off on him, like who really knows?
I know. It's like the thing is like and I'm with you. Like Robert, there's like that match with Danielson and Garcia was awesome. I love the story that played off into it, where it's like, Chris Jericho Appreciation Society's got a crap ton of members, and I think the transition of Sammy and Ty Conte in there, kind of makes it, a little bit more crowded than it needs to be. So if you're going to get Daniel Garcia out of it, this is a great way to do it, because like they originally wanted him in the Blackpool Combat Club anyways. And so I think it was a really good setup, and it really elevated Daniel Garcia, not just from the match that he had with Danielson, but then the interaction with Jericho afterwards and stuff like that. I really think it kind of laid out a good position for building new star. And then you heard that organic crowd reaction from the fans about Daniel Garcia. So that was really good. But it is cramped. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it's too much. Like, and this is something I want to ask Tony Khan if I get the opportunity. Is like, and I've heard before that this is like the plan. This is all planned to have such a bloated roster because you can plug people in when you can plug stars in when somebody goes down or gets hurt. So you have that bullpen lineup in there, but I think it interferes with the product. You're trying to squeeze everybody in, and it just doesn't work. Like, it doesn't make things feel as important as they should. And you forget about who's been in matches before or who's fought who. When even if you have rankings, it kind of just muddies the waters still a lot. So I'm with you. I think they kind of need. I think something needs to be done in that regard where you hone in on stars, and we're seeing that a little bit with Raw, and we're seeing that with SmackDown too a little bit. Where, okay, we're seeing these changes come and this stuff is making sense. A lot of this stuff, it does make sense, but you have to follow everything and you have to keep tabs on everybody. And it's just a lot of people to keep tabs on. So I don't know.
I think once they get a good handle on where Ring of Honor is going, television-wise, I think that'll help things. I think they could better utilize Rampage. I think Rampage right now feels like a C show rather than a B show. I think they have the genuine response and answer of, hey, listen, we have Dark and Dark Elevation, and a lot of great stars are on there as well. But I think you also have to be mindful that, listen, not everyone in your audience is going to go for Elevation, is going to go for Dark. I've been doing that more recently, and it does help, but the onus can't be on the audience.
No,
as the presenter, you need to best present your roster in its most fullest way. And I think that Tony, and I think he's trying. I think that's why you've seen the shakeups backstage where now they're saying QT Marshall is formatting the shows. Now they're saying, you've got Sanjay Dutt in a more hands-on role with talent. You've got Ari Daivari working with the women. I think they're working on it. But again, this is a promotion that went from, we can do it, we are the revolution, to, okay, shit, we're a company now. Now we need a better structure to actually, best suit our staff members and our roster. I think we're watching those growing pains live.
It's true. It's a young company. And Tony Khan even said himself, I think it was on Busted Open, was that, he didn't have an apprenticeship like, certain people did, like a Paul Heyman did with Eddie Gilbert, or like, Triple H under McMahon even, or certain things like that, where it's just, it's okay, he's running the ship, and, you had the EVPs there and stuff like that. But like, I think, and I hope, Tony Khan's going to kind of maybe realize, okay, I can delegate, and it seems like he's going in that regard. But like, I hope that he's like looking to a lot of the older guys, whether it's a JR or Arn or who else was I thinking of? William Regal and stuff like that know that operation, how it all works, because I think it's just beneficial for, to have somebody like that, like to kind of slow things down and like kind of pace it out a little bit more. And you still can have that modern type action and stuff like that, but find the balance in the way it can all congeal with one another to make more of a tangible wrestling product for the casual fan and for just your diehard fan to really, sink their teeth into. So I don't know.
I agree.
I mean, they got some work to do, and I don't want to say they've been caught sitting on their hands when it comes to like what Triple H is doing and everything like that. But I think they've kind of let everything, let a lot of freedom go. Where that's fine. That's what we wanted. We wanted that to a great extent. But there's also the idea of, okay, you're given the freedom for these people to be who they are, but they don't really have the time to really showcase that besides maybe what they do in the ring sometimes. Because like, how many, I was trying to think, the Trust Busters, we've seen Ari talk, but have we seen Slim J or Parker Bordeaux or anybody like that talk? And I think all that stuff's super important. So where do you kind of fall on the amount of balance between like the ring work time and the promo time going on there too?
I think AEW has some of the best workers, and I think they, were founded based on like that idea of being the workers' company. But then you got to look at it and go, well, every company is doing great wrestling now. You
Yeah.
know, let's do more promos. And I think they actually have a decent balance. I just think that for some reason they get in their heads about certain things where they're like, no, we need to do this. Like, we'll talk about the main event. You know, I don't know if you needed to have Andrade and Roosh turn
You
on
didn't.
Dragon Lee in like the last 5 seconds of the show. I don't
No,
know
I'm
if
glad you
that's a
brought. You
necessary
didn't. You
thing.
didn't. Yeah.
Like it's just a matter of pacing, but I think for the most part they do a lot of things really well, and they are still a very young company. They're not even 4 years old yet as a promotion, and they've already accomplished so much. If they went under today, they would have been one of the top wrestling companies in America in the last, you know, half century almost.
Yeah, no, it's true. And to another point is too is like they got off to a hot start. A lot of these, promotions and stuff like that. I mean, more specific WCW, like they had to build to getting hot. Like they started, when Bischoff took over, he introduced the first Nitro and stuff like that, and that garnered some ratings, but it really caught off, moving forward. Like, but to that side of things, it happened a little bit sooner, and things were a little bit more. You had the certain stars, and you had things kind of lined up a little bit more, where the execution of it has been kind of more consistent and steady. So
And I think people need to understand that when you're comparing it to a WCW, so Turner buys it in '88. They become like full WCW by about '91,
yeah,
and Bischoff takes over in '93. So
yeah,
there's still like, even if you're just talking Bischoff, there's still, 2 years of trimming fat and growing pains in that regard before you get to Nitro, where you just see everything skyrocket and wow, the business is booming within a year and a half. I think AEW just was right away number two, and that's a lot of pressure. And they had a roster back then that doesn't reflect their roster now. And again, like, we have to give them the leeway for these growing pains. Now, there's certain things that you got to come down hard on them for. Like, their women's division really doesn't mean anything. And Jade Cargill is a star,
yep.
but in that case, maybe the match at All Out should just be Jade Cargill versus Thunder Rosa, because while Jade is a star, she's the secondary champion of a division that is kind of, you know, still struggling to find its footing 3.5 years in. And I want to see more from the women's division. You've had long enough. There have been improvements, but at this point, I think it's not enough. We need consistency from the women, and hopefully, that's one of those problems that can be addressed.
I
You
think
know,
I think it needs they need promo time. They need more promo time. It's like it's okay. You have it's all the roller coaster of Dynamite going on, action, 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 and like you have promos here. Okay, that's intriguing. Boom. But then all of a sudden a women's match gets thrusted in, and you're like, I want that, but it came out of nowhere, kind of thing. It always kind of has that vibe, like, oh, here's the women's match, and there's no like time for them to. I want to hear Tony Storm talk more. I want to hear like Thunder Rosa cut a promo. I want to hear Jade Cargill go out to the ring and have a segment or something like that, where it's like that's what you see from like a CM Punk or something. Position those younger and like newer talents as those talents that you give those opportunities to, like a Moxley and a Punk and things like that, where it's. I think you need to, again, it goes to honing in on certain people and making and kind of leveling and whittling down to what is important to your show. And I think that's going to help elevate the women's division more, because there's so many of those women's stars that I want to see wrestle more, and like the personas of and everything like that, like Athena and like I said, Tony Storm, Jamie Hayter's really, catching fire in a lot of ways. And I know she just got hurt, but Chris Statlander's another one, and certain things like that. But it's a little head scratching in that regard.
yeah, and I also think while it's important to give them the promo time in front of the live audience, maybe keep that reserved for Jade who seems to have more of a star presence in front of people, whereas maybe even on the men's side, like a Jungle Boy or a Thunder Rosa, anyone that struggles, I think there's nothing wrong with the pre-tape vignette. There's nothing wrong with the pre-tape promo. There's nothing wrong with throwing it to a
Or
promo
an
that can
inset promo too, like in the corner when they're walking
yeah,
out. Like,
there's nothing wrong with that. Where that way you don't have to deal with a crowd doing the what chant and getting in the head of Jungle Boy, and suddenly he's lost his track of mind. And I I don't know. I think little things like that could really help this promotion.
yeah, I agree with you. I agree. Something we didn't talk about is Kenny Omega coming back. Where like is it too soon? Is it just right? Do you think it's just like all kind of it's
I
just
don't think
building up
it's
more
too
toward.
soon. He's been gone almost a year. Now, granted, we don't know where he stands legitimately. They're clearly doing. He's injured. He might have come back too soon.
Yeah.
But I think that that may not be the best way to go. It depends on how quickly he sheds the armor. Because I
Hmm.
don't want Kenny Omega at less than 100% going into All Out and going into this. I think he needs to be ready to go so that he can put on the best show possible. And I assume if he's in the ring, then he's probably ready to go. And it was probably something where they were, exaggerating for storyline effect.
Yeah.
But it's good to see Kenny back. This is the first time Kenny, Brian, and Punk were all on the same show since Full Gear.
That's crazy to
So,
think.
that's important. It's been almost a year. And I want to see more from Kenny. And I'm sure Kenny versus Punk, Kenny versus all these people. I see Steven Chambers in the chat saying Omega Osprey, which we're going to get, I'm sure, at some point in this
Oh yeah.
tournament.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm glad he's back.
Oh man. Nasha doesn't think he's at 100%. I think maybe in his mind, maybe he doesn't think he's at 100%. And maybe like there is some validity to that too, because you know, um, I think the expectation was to have him back by All Out at least. I know they wanted him like at a certain point for Forbidden Door, but that just wasn't in the cards. And so like I think he's kind of like okay, he probably wants to pick up the pace with it too. I think there's a little bit of truth to both of it. I don't.
Yeah.
I think he wore the compression stuff and all that, and I think it's more so like he was maybe self-conscious a little bit or not up to par where he thought his physique might be or something, but ultimately I thought he looked good. I thought he could have took the shirt off and just been okay otherwise, but wrestling's a visual business, and you know how people are, how the internet is. So
And I think that was intentional. They want to get the conversation around, well, what's his condition? He's wrestling with a compression shirt on. He doesn't wrestle with a shirt on. What are we doing here? What's happening? I think it's all leading towards obviously Undisputed Era, Elite. I would say Full Gear. It could happen as soon as Grand Slam, but I
mhm.
think if Kenny's going to be in the tournament, I think they should go all the way, and I think Elite should be the first trios champions.
I mean that makes sense. I almost feel that they could lose though and be all right because I'd like to see like the House of Black do it, or um, you know, uh, even Death Triangle, I think. But I really more on the leaning side of like House of Black just because they need something going.
So
But
if it's not the Elite, I think it should absolutely, the only other team I would really accept would be Best Friends
yeah,
because they've been there since day one. Give them
uh,
both.
see, I don't know though. It's like I get it, but it almost seems like kind of like a gold watch kind of thing, where it's like I don't know. I would be more on the lines of let's get or Malachi Black something. Let's get this faction going that we've been wanting to pick up a little bit more, and because they've been pushed to the wayside a lot of the ways, and it's I was kind of almost bummed in a way that Andrade and Rush and Dragon Lee were facing the Bucks because they need something too. It just boils down to a lot of people again.
And the problem is that everyone in this tournament, you're going, well, they need something because Dark Order is here, and the whole story is Dark Order needs something. Hey, they lost 3 of their guys. They lost Anna. Like, they need something. So it's really going to come down to, do you give it to the elite or do you give it to a random faction that needs something? And really, when you put it like that, it's anybody's ball game.
Right. So at least there's the intrigue of we don't know what's going to happen, you know. So I guess that they got that going for them, which is nice. But let's close out with this. We talked about MJF. Do you think that's what should happen? Is he should come back next week and get the ball rolling? Then maybe potentially, I don't know, like ultimately, maybe you either have the rematch of Mox and Punk that been reported, or do you have MJF versus CM Punk? Where do you fall on all that?
I mean, honestly, MJF, assuming that his deal
Mm-hmm.
was half shoot, half work, MJF has been blessed by the most chaotic year in wrestling, to the
Yes.
point where for 5 seconds, all of the onus in the wrestling world was on MJF and AEW, and then Sasha and Naomi, and then Vince retires. You could say, I see a comment here that says save MJF for All Out. You could save MJF for All Out of next year, and he'd be as hot as ever. I want them to bring MJF back, but not next week. It's too soon.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I think they need to bring him back sooner than later. And I think the good way to do it is like, sure, yeah, Triple H and WWE's getting all this buzz. I think inserting him into the storyline makes plenty of sense. It's not like he's being shoehorned into it, like to the extent of, okay, this is unexpectedly happening where Mox and Punk are facing each other next week, Wednesday, and then they're supposedly facing one another all out. In that regard, he's kind of shoehorned in. But from a storyline and like a logistics perspective, it kind of does make sense. So I think, because at this point in time, I know a lot of shit happened. And that's a great point too, Robert, is like a lot of shit has happened in wrestling that has got people distracted when it's Vince McMahon and Sasha Banks and Naomi and then Triple H and, just all of this and Ric Flair's last match, all this.
I mean, Jonathan Gresham
Yes.
apparently confronting Tony Khan and using his PWI rankings to do so.
Yes.
Like, there's so much happening.
So
right
much.
Now.
So I get it. But also, like, you want MJF to still be fresh in the minds of people to be like, okay, like, well, that promo that he cut is still fresh in our minds. And I think almost in an indirect manner that the opening segment between Punk and Moxley felt very like along the lines of what MJF did weeks ago and stuff like that, where it was like, oh man, they're really cutting one another. Punk's laying into like these baby faces. Why was Hangman brought up? What the hell was that about? I think all that kind of like refreshes the brain of, hey, MJF cut that badass promo like in June, and I think to keep that fresh in the people's minds, if you insert him into the storyline next week where he, either screws one of them over or like appears after the match, and then boom, all of a sudden he gets inserted into All Out somehow, some way, maybe not even in the match, but he's a factor, playing into the game. I think that's important to do. I think it's necessary to do, and especially if you're trying to pop a big rating too. I think it's, putting MJF in that mix, I think is pretty key at this point. So I don't think it's too soon for it to happen. I don't want them to like push him out to sea and then we forget about all that he's kind of done. And then when they bring him back by that time, it's like, oh yeah, he did do that. But it just seems a little past its sell date almost. I don't know. But you don't think it is, right?
I don't think it is at all, because I think utilize that reality. Like, I think one of the issues with Punk in 2011 was they brought him back so quickly when they could have just had him do whatever. And I think MJF, you could have him literally do whatever and then just pop up in the crowd of like a New York Dynamite and cut away. And was that MJF? And then nothing again for another 2 months. I think you really can play the long game. AEW has the benefit of, they don't have an established formula. You don't have to play by the rules. You can do really whatever you need to do to best serve your audience. And I think that with MJF, they have an opportunity like no other. At the same time, if that is the plan for All Out, you get there by just saying, well, Max is the only person who's beaten Punk. And that's how you get to that match.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
If it is Punk, if it's not Moxley, like again, the exciting thing is you don't know what's going to happen, and I would much rather my wrestling to be you don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Keep that unpredictably, and then you have the two guys that are able to like perpetuate a buzz with Punk and Moxley, and then you have the outside factors of the reports going on and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely an intriguing time. I will say though, like the time is different. So like 2011, stuff wasn't as immediate and like things weren't as fast paced where people immediately forget something or they're just over inundated with content, and things like that. It was a different time. So like, I don't know, I think it's a different time that, things don't stay in the mind as long as they did back in 2011. So I'm with you on the Punk thing. Like back in 2011, that was way too soon. And
You've got a point there though, because with the way content and news and everything is rapidly moving, you could lose sight. But I think that's one of the reasons why if you can hold out, you can be an outlier. That's just my one hope is that you can hold out as long as you possibly want to for this storyline.
I think to your point, if they plant some seeds, they can kind of extend it a little bit. I think that, like, say if he's randomly showed up at Grand Slam or something like that, and then you don't see him again, I think he could kind of make something out of that for sure. So, yes, but interesting times, Robert.
Dominic, it's interesting times. It's the coming together of worlds. We haven't done this in years at this point, and that's a shame. Like, I appreciate it. I appreciate being here. I appreciate AEW. I'm excited for every Dynamite, every Rampage, and I'm looking forward to covering it all.
Well, speaking of coverage, what's all on your plate right now? What's in your immediate forefront that you can tell the listeners here at WrestleZone what you got going on?
Well, of course, as you see on the screen, follow me at DudeFelice. Check out my work on Fightful every single day of the week. Check me out here on WrestleZone.com. Always helping to give that 1-2 punch for content over here as well. Check out an interview I just did with Tom Talks Rubbish, where we get into disability awareness, we get into all that good stuff. Check out Smark Out Moment. I'm on there as well. I mean, Dominic, I'm everywhere, as you understand, because you are also everywhere. You're just you are the true mercenary because
I've joined your ranks.
You're getting out there, brother. I mean, what do you got going on?
You paved the way, and I hopped on that bandwagon.
I do appreciate it.
You're welcome. I told him earlier in the show I interviewed Brian Gowords for here on WrestleZone, and then I have a new show on ad-free shows. In depth with Tom DeShanes, Harvard scholar, way smarter than me, literary scholar, knows all the ins and outs of like Shakespeare, Aristotle, and like our first episode, we covered the mega powers. He went deep into
2 hours and 40 minutes just about of
crazy.
Great content on one of the honest to God, one of the most money drawing angles in WWF history. Go check that out. Go check out all of the great content on ad-free shows. I can honestly say they are providing a wonderful service. Everybody knows about Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, Foley is Pod, Gentleman Villain with Regal. Listen, ad-free shows is where it's at in wrestling podcasts, and you've got a great team.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been surreal, and it's like, everything's moving, and it's a lot of wrestling, but it's good stuff. It's fun stuff. It's
it's the best in the world, I dare say.
Right? There we go. Yes. All right, guys, Nesha, everybody, thanks for joining in. I got to get Marcus and myself a fire lit on our asses to keep doing this here more steady. So we'll be doing that. But Robert, I
honestly, if you need the fill-in, I am here.
Okay.
For you whenever you need the second Dynamite Dude with attitude. It's been fun, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's a good time. So, hey guys, thanks for joining in, and we'll see you next time here on 2 AEW Dynamite Dudes. All right.